Electric streetcars. In the early 1900s, electric streetcar systems were the backbone of American public transportation. Over 1,200 cities had electric streetcar networks. The systems were efficient, popular, and profitable. They moved millions of people daily at low cost. Then they were systematically destroyed, bought up and dismantled by a conspiracy of oil, tire, and automobile companies. Electric streetcars worked brilliantly. They ran on electricity from overhead wires, producing no local pollution. They were faster than horse-drawn carriages and more efficient than individual automobiles. The systems were profitable. Streetcar companies made money while providing affordable transportation. Cities were designed around streetcars. Neighborhoods developed along streetcar lines. Commercial districts emerged at major stops. The systems shaped urban development for decades, creating walkable, transit-oriented communities. Then General Motors, Standard Oil, Firestone Tires, and Phillips Petroleum formed a holding company called National City Lines in 1936. Their purpose was to buy streetcar systems and convert them to buses. Not because buses were better, because buses used gas, oil, and tires that these companies sold. National City Lines bought streetcar systems in over 45 cities, including Los Angeles, Philadelphia, St. Louis, Oakland, and Baltimore. In each city, they followed the same pattern: buy the streetcar company, rip up the tracks, replace streetcars with buses, then sell the degraded bus system to the city. The Los Angeles streetcar system was particularly extensive. The Pacific Electric Railway operated over 1,000 miles of track throughout Southern California. It was the largest electric railway system in the world. National City Lines bought it in 1940 and systematically dismantled it over the next decade. The conversions were disaster for public transit. Buses were slower than streetcars. They got stuck in traffic. They required more frequent replacement than electric streetcars. Ridership declined as service degraded. Cities that once had excellent public transit were forced into automobile dependence. This wasn't speculation or conspiracy theory. In 1949, General Motors, Standard Oil, Firestone, and other companies were convicted in federal court of conspiracy to monopolize the sale of buses and supplies to National City Lines. The conviction was upheld on appeal. The conspiracy was proven in court. The punishment was absurd. General Motors was fined $5,000. The executives were fined $1 each. For destroying public transportation in dozens of American cities and forcing automobile dependence, they paid trivial fines. The streetcar systems were gone, and the companies profited enormously from the resulting automobile sales. By 1955, nearly all American streetcar systems were destroyed. A few survived: San Francisco's cable cars, New Orleans streetcars, and a handful of others preserved as tourist attractions. But the comprehensive urban transit networks that served everyday transportation were gone. The result was automobile dependence. Cities built for public transit became impassable without cars. Suburbs sprawled as development followed highways instead of rail lines. Oil consumption soared. Air pollution increased. The destruction of streetcars fundamentally reshaped American cities. Modern cities are now rebuilding light rail systems at enormous cost, spending billions to recreate transit networks that were deliberately destroyed. Portland, Denver, Phoenix, and other cities have built new light rail systems, but construction costs are astronomical compared to maintaining the systems that were destroyed. The streetcar destruction proves the pattern. A solution worked. Electric transit was efficient, clean, and profitable. But it threatened oil, tire, and automobile sales. So lobbyists intervened, not through Congress, but through direct corporate action. They bought the solution and destroyed it, creating dependence on products they sold. If streetcar systems had been preserved and modernized instead of destroyed, American cities would be far less car-dependent. Transit would be better. Oil consumption would be lower. Urban development would be denser and more sustainable. But the solution worked too well. It reduced dependence on automobiles. So it was killed. Hemp agriculture. Hemp is one of humanity's most useful crops. It produces fiber for textiles and rope, seeds for food and oil, and cellulose for paper. It grows quickly with minimal water and fertilizer. It improves soil quality. For thousands of years, hemp was cultivated worldwide. Then in 1937, it was effectively banned in the United States after a lobbying campaign by industries that hemp threatened. Hemp cultivation in America was encouraged from colonial times. The first American flags were made from hemp fabric, ship sails and rope were hemp. George Washington and Thomas Jefferson grew hemp. During World War II, the government ran a Hemp for Victory campaign, encouraging farmers to grow it for military supplies. But hemp threatened multiple industries. Hemp fiber competed with DuPont's new synthetic fibers like nylon. Hemp paper competed with wood pulp paper from forests owned by newspaper magnate William Randolph Hearst. Hemp seed oil could be used as fuel or industrial oil, competing with petroleum products. The campaign against hemp used marijuana prohibition as cover. Hemp and marijuana are the same plant species, Cannabis sativa. But hemp is bred for fiber and seeds containing negligible THC, the psychoactive compound in marijuana. Smoking hemp doesn't produce a high. It's an industrial crop, not a drug. Nevertheless, the 1937 Marijuana Tax Act effectively banned all cannabis cultivation, including industrial hemp. The act imposed prohibitive taxes and regulations on cannabis. Growing hemp became legally impossible, even though hemp wasn't psychoactive. The lobbying behind the act was documented. Harry Anslinger, head of the Federal Bureau of Narcotics, worked closely with DuPont and Hearst interests to promote cannabis prohibition. DuPont had patented nylon in 1935 and wanted to eliminate hemp fiber competition. Hearst's newspapers ran sensationalist anti-marijuana propaganda. Andrew Mellon, Treasury Secretary and DuPont's primary financier, appointed Anslinger to head the Narcotics Bureau. Anslinger's testimony to Congress was filled with racist propaganda about marijuana causing violence and insanity. He deliberately conflated industrial hemp with marijuana to justify banning both. The American Medical Association opposed the act, testifying that cannabis had medical uses and the ban was scientifically unjustified. But their opposition was ignored. The act passed in 1937, and American hemp agriculture ended. For 80 years, American farmers couldn't grow hemp, despite it being legal and common in other countries. Canada, China, and European nations continued hemp cultivation. Only America banned this useful crop, protecting synthetic fiber and paper industries from competition. The ban caused enormous harm. Synthetic fibers like nylon are petroleum-based and non-biodegradable. Hemp fiber is natural and biodegradable. Paper from hemp requires less processing than wood pulp and doesn't require clear-cutting forests. Banning hemp forced inferior alternatives. Hemp was finally re-legalized in the 2018 Farm Bill after decades of advocacy. American farmers can now grow industrial hemp again, but 80 years of prohibition destroyed the industry. Knowledge was lost, processing infrastructure disappeared. American hemp agriculture is rebuilding from scratch. The hemp ban proves the pattern. A solution worked. Hemp provided superior fiber, paper, and oil, but it threatened DuPont's synthetic fibers and Hearst's paper business. So, lobbyists intervened, using marijuana prohibition as justification to ban industrial hemp. An entire agricultural sector was destroyed to protect corporate profits. If hemp had remained legal, American agriculture and industry would be different. Biodegradable hemp fiber instead of petroleum-based synthetics. Hemp paper instead of clear-cut forests for wood pulp. Hemp seed oil for industrial uses, but the solution threatened established industries, so it was banned for 80 years. Incandescent light bulb longevity. In the early 1900s, light bulb manufacturers produced bulbs lasting 2,500 plus hours. Some experimental bulbs lasted over 100,000 hours. Then in 1924, major manufacturers formed the Phoebus Cartel and agreed to limit bulb lifespans to 1,000 hours. Longer-lasting bulbs were deliberately eliminated to increase sales through planned obsolescence. The Phoebus Cartel included Osram, Philips, General Electric, and other major manufacturers. They controlled 99% of global light bulb production. In secret meetings in Switzerland, they agreed to standardize bulb lifespans at 1,000 hours and impose fines on any manufacturer producing longer-lasting bulbs. The cartel established a testing laboratory in Switzerland to monitor compliance. Manufacturers submitted bulbs for testing. If bulbs lasted significantly longer than 1,000 hours, the manufacturer was fined. The fines were substantial, enough to discourage deviation from the standard. Internal cartel documents show this was deliberate planned obsolescence. Minutes from meetings discuss strategies to reduce bulb lifespan without making the reduction obvious to consumers. Engineers were directed to design bulbs that failed after approximately 1,000 hours. Before the cartel, bulb lifespans were increasing as technology improved. The trend toward longer-lasting bulbs was reversed by cartel agreement. Lifespan decreased from 2,500 hours to 1,000 hours despite advancing technology. This was engineering in reverse, making products worse on purpose. The cartel was investigated in multiple countries. The U.S. investigated under antitrust laws, but didn't break it up. European authorities investigated, but enforcement was weak. The cartel operated from 1924 until World War II disrupted it in 1939. After the war, the 1,000-hour standard remained. Even though the cartel dissolved, manufacturers continued limiting bulb lifespan. The practice was embedded in industry standards. Consumers came to expect that bulbs lasted about 1,000 hours because that's what was sold. There's a famous example in Livermore, California, the Centennial Light. This bulb has been burning continuously since 1901. It's lasted over 1 million hours because it was manufactured before the cartel established planned obsolescence. The bulb proves that long-lasting bulbs are technically possible. They were just deliberately eliminated. Modern LED bulbs last longer than incandescent bulbs, 25,000 plus hours for quality LEDs. But even LEDs show evidence of planned obsolescence. Cheap LEDs fail much sooner than their technical potential. The practice of limiting product lifespan to increase replacement sales continues. The light bulb cartel established the model for planned obsolescence across industries. Deliberately making products fail to force replacement purchases became standard business practice. From printer ink cartridges to phone batteries to appliances, products are designed to fail. The Phoebus cartel proves the pattern. A solution worked. Long-lasting light bulbs reduced replacement costs for consumers. But this threatened manufacturer sales, so they formed a cartel to deliberately reduce quality. The solution of durable products was killed to increase profits through planned obsolescence. If the cartel had been broken up and long-lasting bulbs had continued development, lighting costs would be far lower. Waste would be reduced. Resources saved from not manufacturing billions of unnecessary replacement bulbs. But durable products reduce sales. So, the solution was banned by industry agreement. Right to repair. For most of history, when something broke, you could fix it. You owned the product, so you had the right to repair it yourself or hire an independent repair shop. Then, electronics manufacturers began using proprietary screws, encrypting diagnostic codes, and suing repair shops. The right to repair was eliminated through lobbying and legal action. The fight over repair rights intensified with smartphones, tractors, and medical equipment. Manufacturers designed products to prevent repair. Apple uses proprietary screws requiring special tools. John Deere encrypts tractor software so farmers can't repair their own equipment. Medical device manufacturers void warranties if hospitals use independent repair. The manufacturer's argument is that repairs must be authorized to ensure safety and quality. Unauthorized repairs could damage devices or create safety hazards. Only manufacturer-certified technicians with proprietary tools and training should repair products. But the real reason is profit. Manufacturers make enormous money from repair monopolies. Apple's repair services charge far more than independent shops. John Deere dealers charge farmers premium prices for tractor repairs. Medical device manufacturers charge hospitals hundreds of thousands for repairs that independent technicians could do cheaper. Manufacturers also use repair restrictions to force upgrades. If repair is impossible or too expensive, consumers buy new products. An iPhone with a broken screen might cost $300 to repair through Apple, encouraging purchase of a new $1,000 phone instead. This generates far more revenue than allowing cheap third-party repairs. Right-to-repair legislation has been introduced in multiple states. Massachusetts passed a limited right-to-repair law for automobiles in 2012. Voters approved it by 86%, one of the most popular ballot measures in state history. But manufacturers lobbied to limit its scope and delay implementation. When right-to-repair laws are proposed for electronics or tractors, manufacturers spend millions lobbying against them. Apple, John Deere, and medical device companies hire lobbyists to kill bills. They testify that repair rights would compromise safety, security, and intellectual property. The lobbying works. Right-to-repair bills have been introduced in over 25 states. Most fail due to manufacturer lobbying. A few pass with such limited scope that they are nearly meaningless. The solution, the right to repair products you own, is repeatedly blocked by lobbyists. Apple's repair restrictions are particularly egregious. The company designs iPhones with serialized parts that won't function if replaced with parts from another phone. Even if you have two identical iPhones and swap parts between them, the parts won't work without Apple's proprietary software to authorize them. Independent repair shops face legal threats. Apple has sued repair shops for using refurbished parts. John Deere threatens farmers with lawsuits for using tractor diagnostic software. Medical device manufacturers sue hospitals for hiring independent technicians. The legal warfare intimidates independent repair. Farmers are particularly harmed. Modern tractors have computerized systems that only dealers can repair. When a tractor breaks during harvest, farmers must wait for dealer technicians who charge premium rates. Farmers who used to repair their own equipment are now dependent on manufacturer repair monopolies. The environmental impact is massive. Products that could be repaired are discarded. Electronic waste is the fastest growing waste stream globally. Most of it could be prevented through repair, but manufacturer restrictions force replacement instead of repair. Right to repair proves the pattern. A solution worked. Repairing products extended their life, saved money, and reduced waste. But it threatened manufacturer profits from repairs and forced upgrades. So manufacturers lobbied to eliminate repair rights through proprietary designs and legal restrictions. If right to repair were restored, product lifespans would increase, electronic waste would decrease, consumers would save money, but manufacturers would lose repair monopoly profits. So the solution is blocked by lobbyists who ensure products can only be repaired by those who profit from expensive repairs. Community broadband. In the early 2000s, many cities decided to build their own broadband networks. Municipal broadband provided faster, cheaper internet than private ISPs. Over 750 communities built public broadband networks. Then, telecom companies lobbied states to ban municipal broadband, blocking the solution in over 20 states. Municipal broadband worked extremely well. Cities like Chattanooga, Tennessee, built gigabit fiber networks years before private companies offered similar speeds. The public networks charged less, often half the price of commercial internet for better service. Customer satisfaction was higher. The networks paid for themselves through subscriber fees. Chattanooga's EPB fiber optics became a model. The city-owned electric utility built a fiber network offering 1 gigabit internet for $70 a month, when private ISPs charge more for far slower speeds. The network attracted tech companies to Chattanooga, boosted economic development, and proved municipal broadband could succeed. Wilson, North Carolina built Greenlight, a city-owned fiber network. It offered gigabit internet, TV, and phone service. Prices were lower than Time Warner Cable, the dominant private ISP. Service was better. Residents overwhelmingly supported it. Greenlight operated profitably and expanded to neighboring areas. The telecom industry panicked. If cities could build better, cheaper networks, why would anyone pay Comcast or AT&T? Municipal broadband threatened the ISP business model, regional monopolies charging high prices for mediocre service. So, telecoms lobbied state legislatures to ban municipal broadband. They wrote model legislation prohibiting cities from building networks or competing with private ISPs. The American Legislative Exchange Council, ALEC, a corporate lobbying group, distributed the legislation to state legislatures. Over 20 states passed laws restricting or banning municipal broadband. The laws varied but generally prohibited cities from offering internet service or required such onerous processes that building networks became nearly impossible. The restrictions were written by telecom lobbyists and passed with minimal public input. North Carolina's law was particularly restrictive. It prohibited cities from expanding municipal networks beyond their current service areas. This stopped Greenlight from expanding to nearby towns that wanted to join. The law was written by Time Warner Cable lobbyists and passed despite strong opposition. Tennessee's law prevented EPB from expanding outside Chattanooga, despite neighboring counties begging for service. Communities wanted the fast, cheap internet that Chattanooga had, but the law, written by Comcast and AT&T, prohibited expansion. Nearby residents were stuck with slow, expensive commercial internet. The FCC under Tom Wheeler tried to preempt state restrictions on municipal broadband, ruling that states couldn't ban cities from building networks. But this was overturned in federal court in 2016. States retained the right to ban municipal broadband, protecting ISP monopolies from competition. The telecom lobbying was blatant. In some states, legislators openly admitted the bills were written by Comcast or AT&T. Lobbyists testified that municipal broadband was unfair government competition with private business. They claimed cities would build networks, fail, and burden taxpayers. But this was demonstrably false. Municipal networks were succeeding. They were profitable. They provided better service at lower prices. The only entities threatened were ISPs who charged high prices for inferior service. Telecoms weren't afraid cities would fail. They were afraid cities would succeed. The bans worked. Municipal broadband expansion stopped in restricted states. Cities that wanted to build networks were blocked by state law. Residents were stuck with whatever the local ISP monopoly provided. The solution, public broadband networks, was banned to protect private monopolies. Some cities fought back. Longmont, Colorado. Voters overturned the state's municipal broadband restriction through a ballot measure and built their own network. But most cities lack the resources to fight state laws. The restrictions remain in most states, blocking superior public networks. Municipal broadband proves the pattern. A solution worked. Public networks provided faster, cheaper internet than private ISPs. But it threatened telecom profits. So lobbyists wrote laws banning the solution in over 20 states. Cities were prohibited from building networks that worked better than commercial service. If municipal broadband were allowed everywhere, internet service would be faster and cheaper. Rural areas without commercial service could build public networks. But this would reduce ISP profits and monopoly control. So the solution is banned in many states through telecom lobbying. Rainwater harvesting. Collecting rainwater from your roof is one of the simplest water conservation methods. It reduces demand on water utilities and provides backup supply during droughts. For most of history, rainwater harvesting was common. Then, in several states, it was banned or heavily restricted after lobbying by water utilities protecting their monopolies. Rainwater harvesting is straightforward. Gutters direct rain from roofs to storage tanks. The water is filtered for drinking or used for irrigation. In dry climates, rainwater harvesting significantly reduces utility water demand. In wet climates, it reduces stormwater runoff. Colorado banned rainwater harvesting entirely until 2009. The state claimed all precipitation belonged to downstream water rights holders. Collecting rain from your own roof was technically illegal. You were stealing water that belonged to someone with water rights downstream. This was absurd. Rain falling on your roof wasn't going to reach downstream water rights holders anyway. It would evaporate or soak into ground. But Colorado water law, dating to the 1800s, claimed all water in the state belonged to rights holders. Individuals couldn't collect rain without violating these rights. The law was driven by water utilities and agricultural water rights holders. Utilities feared that rainwater harvesting would reduce demand, cutting their revenue. Large agricultural operations with senior water rights claimed any water collection upstream violated their rights. After years of advocacy, Colorado modified the law in 2009. Homeowners with private wells could now collect rainwater in limited quantities, 2 55-gallon barrels maximum. This was a tiny concession. 110 gallons is almost nothing for household use, but it was presented as a compromise. In 2016, Colorado expanded rainwater harvesting rights slightly. Homeowners could now collect from roof surfaces for outdoor irrigation, but drinking water collection remained restricted to those with wells. Most urban residents still couldn't legally harvest rainwater for household use. Other states have similar restrictions. Utah limited rainwater collection until 2010. Nevada requires permits that are nearly impossible to obtain. Washington regulates rainwater collection, depending on local water rights. The regulations are complex and often prohibit what should be a simple conservation measure. The restrictions are driven by water utility lobbying. In Las Vegas, the water utility opposed rainwater harvesting because it would reduce water sales. They argued that conservation measures should be managed by utilities, not individuals. Individual rainwater collection was inefficient and should be banned. This is circular logic. Utilities oppose conservation because it reduces revenue. So, they lobby to ban conservation measures or force people to buy water instead of collecting their own. The goal is maintaining demand, not actually conserving water. In drought-prone regions where rainwater harvesting would be most beneficial, restrictions are often strongest. California encourages rainwater harvesting, but some local water districts prohibit it. Texas generally allows it, but some areas restrict it. The patchwork of regulations makes a simple conservation measure unnecessarily complex. The environmental benefits of rainwater harvesting are clear. It reduces demand on groundwater and surface water. It decreases stormwater runoff that causes flooding and pollution. It provides backup water supply during droughts. It's a distributed system that increases resilience, but utilities lose revenue when people collect their own water. Every gallon collected from rooftops is a gallon not purchased from utilities. In areas with declining water tables and droughts, utilities should encourage rainwater harvesting. Instead, many restrict it to protect revenue. Rainwater harvesting proves the pattern. A solution worked. Collecting rainwater conserved water and reduced utility demand. But it threatened utility revenue. So utilities lobbied for restrictions making rainwater collection illegal or heavily regulated. A simple conservation measure was banned to protect water monopolies. If rainwater harvesting were universally legal and encouraged, household water use would decrease. Pressure on aquifers and water systems would drop. Drought resilience would improve, but utilities would sell less water. So, the solution is restricted through lobbying to maintain utility monopolies on water supply. Tiny houses. Tiny houses, small dwellings typically under 400 square feet, solve multiple problems. They're affordable, energy efficient, and use minimal land. In the 2010s, tiny houses became popular as housing costs soared. Then cities banned them after lobbying from construction and banking industries that profit from larger, more expensive housing. Tiny houses cost a fraction of traditional houses. A tiny house might cost $30,000, $60,000 versus $300,000 for a typical house. Young people, retirees, and others priced out of housing markets could afford tiny houses. They provided a path to homeownership that didn't require massive mortgages. The houses are also sustainable. Smaller spaces require less energy to heat and cool. They use fewer materials to build. They can be off-grid with solar panels and composting toilets. Tiny houses reduce environmental impact while providing quality housing. Many tiny houses are built on trailers, making them mobile. This allows owners to move if needed and technically classifies them as RVs rather than permanent structures. But this classification became the basis for bans. Zoning laws prohibit living in RVs. Cities began banning tiny houses through zoning restrictions. Minimum square footage requirements prohibited houses smaller than 600, 1,000 square feet. This explicitly banned tiny houses. Homeowners who built tiny houses found them illegal to occupy. The minimum square footage requirements were lobbied for by the construction industry. Home builders don't profit from tiny houses. The houses are often owner-built or constructed by small builders. Large construction companies make money from traditional subdivisions with large homes. Banking industry lobbying also drove tiny house restrictions. Mortgages on expensive homes generate enormous interest revenue over 30 years. A $300,000 mortgage at 4% generates over $200,000 in interest. Banks profit from large mortgages. Tiny houses that cost $50,000 and might be purchased without mortgages generate no interest revenue. Real estate industry lobbying reinforced the bans. Realtors earn commissions based on sale prices. A $300,000 house sale generates a $9,000 commission at 3%. A $50,000 tiny house generates $1,500. The real estate industry profits from expensive houses and has no interest in promoting affordable alternatives. Cities also cited concerns about property values. They claimed tiny houses would reduce neighboring property values. But this was often cover for protecting construction and banking interests. Some cities were explicit that tiny houses didn't generate enough property tax revenue to be worth allowing. The bans effectively eliminated tiny houses as a housing solution in most cities. People who built tiny houses found they couldn't legally place them anywhere. Some had to move repeatedly to avoid enforcement. Others gave up and sold their tiny houses. A few cities created specific tiny house communities or modified zoning to allow them in limited areas. Portland, Oregon, and Austin, Texas have been relatively accommodating, but these are exceptions. Most cities maintain zoning that prohibits tiny houses. The irony is that during a housing affordability crisis, an affordable housing solution is banned. As housing costs soar and homelessness increases, cities prohibit small, affordable houses that could shelter people. The bans protect construction and banking profits while worsening the housing crisis. Tiny houses also faced restrictions from RV regulations. Many jurisdictions prohibit living in RVs. Since tiny houses on trailers are classified as RVs, living in them violates these laws. Enforcement varies, but the legal status is precarious. Some tiny house owners have fought back through advocacy for zoning reform. Organizations like the American Tiny House Association lobby for changing minimum square footage requirements. Some success has been achieved, but progress is slow against construction and banking lobbies. Tiny houses proved the pattern. A solution worked. Small, affordable houses provided home ownership without massive mortgages. But it threatened construction and banking profits. So lobbyists intervened through minimum square footage zoning that banned tiny houses. An affordable housing solution was eliminated to protect industries profiting from expensive housing. If tiny houses were universally legal, housing would be more affordable. People priced out of traditional housing markets could own homes. Homelessness would decrease. But banks would lose mortgage interest, builders would lose construction profits, and realtors would lose commissions. So the solution is banned to protect the industries profiting from the housing crisis. Raw milk sales. Raw milk, unpasteurized milk directly from cows, was the only kind of milk for thousands of years. It contains beneficial bacteria and enzymes that pasteurization destroys. For people with certain health conditions, raw milk is easier to digest than pasteurized. Then in the 20th century, most states banned raw milk sales after lobbying by industrial dairy and health departments. Pasteurization was introduced to kill bacteria in milk from dirty industrial dairies. Large dairies with poor sanitation produce bacteria-laden milk. Pasteurization made unsafe milk safe. But pasteurization also kills beneficial bacteria, enzymes, and denatures proteins. Pasteurized milk is less nutritious than raw milk from clean dairies. Small dairies with healthy cows and proper sanitation can produce safe raw milk. The milk is tested for pathogens. Cows are inspected for disease. Facilities are cleaned rigorously. Raw milk from these dairies is safe, safer than many other foods that aren't routinely pasteurized. But industrial dairies can't produce safe raw milk. Their operations are too large, too focused on volume, too unsanitary. Raw milk from industrial dairies would sicken people. So industrial dairies lobbied to ban all raw milk sales, eliminating competition from small dairies. The lobbying worked. Most states now ban or heavily restrict raw milk sales. In many states, selling raw milk is illegal. In others, it can only be sold on farm or through herd share arrangements. The regulations make raw milk difficult or impossible to access for most consumers. The FDA claims raw milk is inherently dangerous. They cite outbreaks of illness from raw milk consumption, but these outbreaks are rare, far rarer than illness from other foods. Pasteurized milk has recalls for contamination regularly, but this doesn't lead to calls for banning pasteurized milk. The data shows raw milk from properly managed dairies is safe. States that allow raw milk sales haven't experienced epidemic illness. European countries that allow raw milk sales haven't seen catastrophic outbreaks. The claimed danger is vastly overstated. Industrial dairy lobbying drove the bans. Large dairies want to eliminate small dairy competition. If raw milk is legal, consumers might choose small local dairies over industrial operations. This threatens market share for large producers. Better to ban raw milk and force everyone to buy pasteurized. Enforcement of raw milk bans is aggressive. Farmers selling raw milk have been raided by armed agents. Computers and business records have been confiscated. Farmers have been arrested and prosecuted. The response is disproportionate to the supposed crime of selling milk. In California, James Stewart owned Rawsome Foods, a private food co-op selling raw milk and other unpasteurized products. In 2011, armed agents raided the co-op, confiscated products and computers, and arrested Stewart. He faced 13 years in prison for selling raw milk to willing customers. The Amish have faced particular persecution. Their religious and cultural practices include consuming raw milk. Federal agents have shut down Amish farms selling raw milk across state lines. Dan Allgaier, an Amish farmer, had his farm shut down and was fined for selling raw milk to customers in other states. The punishment is absurd. Farmers providing raw milk to customers who want it face criminal charges, fines, and imprisonment. Meanwhile, industrial operations selling milk contaminated with antibiotics, hormones, and pus cells face warnings at most. Some states allow raw milk sales with restrictions. California allows retail sales. Pennsylvania allows on-farm sales. But most states prohibit sales entirely, or make them so restricted that few farmers can comply. The majority of Americans can't legally purchase raw milk. The health benefits of raw milk are documented. It contains beneficial bacteria that support gut health. Enzymes aid digestion. Proteins are in natural form. For people with lactose intolerance, raw milk is often easier to digest than pasteurized because the lactase enzyme is still active. But industrial dairy lobbying ensures raw milk remains illegal in most places. The FDA supports the ban despite evidence that properly produced raw milk is safe. Small dairies that could produce safe raw milk are prohibited from selling it. Raw milk bans prove the pattern. A solution worked. Raw milk from clean dairies provided nutritious food, but it threatened industrial dairy monopolies. So lobbyists intervened to ban raw milk sales. A safe, beneficial food was made illegal to protect industrial operations that can't produce it safely. If raw milk were universally legal with proper testing and standards, consumers could choose between pasteurized and raw. Small dairies could compete with industrial operations, but industrial dairies would lose market share. So, the solution remains banned in most states through lobbying that protects industrial dairy monopolies. Reusable beverage containers. For most of history, beverage containers were reusable. Glass bottles were returned, washed, and refilled. The system worked efficiently. Dairies, breweries, and soft drink companies used refillable bottles for decades. Then disposable containers were introduced, and the beverage industry lobbied to eliminate bottle return systems and ban proposals to restore them. Reusable bottle systems were highly effective. Consumers paid a deposit on bottles, returned them for refund, and companies refilled them. Bottles were used dozens of times before being recycled. The system minimized waste and was economically efficient. In the 1950s-60s, beverage companies shifted to disposable containers. First aluminum cans, then plastic bottles. Disposable containers were cheaper to transport and eliminated return logistics. But they created massive waste. Billions of containers discarded instead of reused. By the 1970s, litter from disposable containers was overwhelming. States began proposing bottle bills, legislation requiring deposits on beverage containers to encourage returns. Oregon passed the first in 1971. Vermont, Maine, and others followed. The beverage industry fought bottle bills viciously. Coca-Cola, Anheuser-Busch, and others formed organizations to oppose deposit legislation. They claimed bottle bills would cost jobs, raise prices, and burden businesses. They spent millions on lobbying and advertising campaigns. The lobbying worked. Only 10 states have bottle bills. Attempts to pass deposit legislation in other states were defeated by beverage industry lobbying. Even in states with bottle bills, the industry lobbied to keep deposit amounts low and limit which containers were covered. California's bottle bill passed in 1986 after fierce opposition from the beverage industry, but it was weakened through lobbying. The deposit is low, 5 cents for small containers, 10 cents for large. Many beverage types aren't covered. Return rates are lower than in states with stronger bills. The beverage industry also lobbied against proposals to require reusable containers. Legislation mandating a return to refillable bottles was proposed in several states in the 1970s. All failed due to industry lobbying. The industry claimed refillable systems were economically unfeasible despite working successfully for decades. Germany maintained a strong refillable bottle system. Up to 80% of beverage containers were refillable glass bottles into the 2000s. The system worked efficiently and minimized waste. But even in Germany, beverage companies pushed for disposables, and refillable rates declined. The environmental cost of disposable containers is enormous. Billions of plastic bottles and aluminum cans are discarded annually. Much ends up in oceans and landfills. Recycling rates are low. Most disposable containers aren't recycled, despite being technically recyclable. The beverage industry promotes recycling as an alternative to deposits and reusable containers. But recycling is far less efficient than reuse. Recycling requires energy and resources. Reusable containers require only washing. Industry-funded recycling programs are often greenwashing, appearing environmental while maintaining disposable container sales. Some municipalities have attempted to ban disposable containers or require reusables. These efforts face immediate industry lawsuits. The American Beverage Association sues cities that try to regulate containers. They argue local bans are preempted by state law or violate interstate commerce. The industry also lobbied for preemption laws preventing local action. Several states passed laws prohibiting cities from banning disposable containers or requiring deposits. These preemption laws were written by beverage industry lobbyists and passed with minimal public input. Small-scale efforts to restore refillable systems face obstacles. Breweries and dairies wanting to use refillable bottles struggle because the infrastructure was dismantled. Bottle washing facilities are rare. Return logistics are complicated. The entire system was destroyed and is difficult to rebuild. Reusable container bans prove the pattern. A solution worked. Refillable bottles minimized waste and worked efficiently for decades. But it was less profitable for beverage companies than disposables, so the industry lobbied against bottle bills and prevented restoration of reusable systems. If refillable container systems were mandated, beverage industry waste would plummet. Plastic pollution would decrease dramatically, but beverage companies would face higher logistics costs. So the solution is blocked through lobbying, and disposable containers continue generating enormous waste and profits. Backyard food production. Growing food in residential yards is one of the oldest human activities. Kitchen gardens, fruit trees, and vegetable plots were standard in residential areas for centuries. Then, in the 20th century, many cities banned front yard gardens and food production after lobbying by homeowner associations and agricultural industry representatives. The bans started with aesthetic restrictions. Homeowner associations prohibited vegetable gardens in front yards, claiming they were unsightly. Covenants required grass lawns. Food plants were restricted to backyards or banned entirely. Some cities enacted similar restrictions. Front yard vegetable gardens were prohibited. Fruit trees were banned in certain areas. Chickens and bees were outlawed. The restrictions were framed as maintaining neighborhood appearance and property values. In Oak Park, Michigan, Julie Bass faced jail time for planting vegetables in her front yard in 2011. The city cited an ordinance requiring front yards to be planted with suitable vegetation. They claimed vegetables weren't suitable. Bass was charged with a misdemeanor punishable by up to 93 days in jail. In Miami Shores, Florida, Hermine Ricketts and Tom Carroll grew vegetables in their front yard for 17 years. In 2013, the city enacted an ordinance banning front yard vegetable gardens. The couple was forced to remove their garden or face daily fines. They sued, arguing the ban violated their property rights. They lost in court. These bans are driven by multiple interests. Homeowner associations want uniform grass lawns they believe maintain property values. Lawn care and chemical companies lobby to maintain demand for grass care products. Agricultural interests oppose urban food production that might reduce grocery purchases. The absurdity is that grass lawns provide no benefit. They don't produce food, require water and chemicals, and provide minimal ecological value. Meanwhile, food gardens produce nutrition, support pollinators, and reduce food system dependence. But lawns are required while food production is banned. Some cities have fought back. In 2020, Florida passed a law preventing municipalities from banning front yard vegetable gardens. The law came after the Miami Shores case highlighted the absurdity of banning food production on your own property. But most jurisdictions still restrict or ban food production. Chickens are prohibited in many cities despite providing eggs and pest control. Fruit trees face restrictions. Front yard gardens are banned. The restrictions force dependence on industrial food systems while prohibiting local food production. The environmental and food security benefits of urban food production are clear. Local food production reduces transportation emissions. It provides fresh food to communities with limited grocery access. It increases resilience during food supply disruptions. During COVID-19, those with food gardens had better food security, but urban food production threatens industrial agriculture. If people grow significant food at home, they buy less from grocery stores. Agricultural corporations lose sales. Better to maintain regulations forcing people to buy food rather than grow it. Backyard food production bans prove the pattern. A solution worked. Growing food at home provided nutrition, reduced costs, and increased food security. But it threatened lawn care industry sales and agricultural industry grocery purchases. So, lobbyists intervened through homeowner association rules and city ordinances banning food gardens. If urban food production were universally legal and encouraged, food security would improve, communities would be more resilient, dependence on industrial agriculture would decrease, but agricultural and lawn care industries would lose sales. So, the solution remains banned or restricted in many areas through regulations protecting industrial food systems. 10 working solutions banned after lobbyists intervened. Electric streetcars destroyed by oil and auto companies. Hemp agriculture banned to protect DuPont and Hearst. Light bulb longevity limited by manufacturer cartels. Right to repair eliminated to protect manufacturer monopolies. Municipal broadband banned to protect ISP monopolies. Rainwater harvesting restricted to protect water utilities. Tiny houses banned to protect construction and banking profits. Raw milk sales criminalized to protect industrial dairies. Reusable containers eliminated to maximize beverage industry waste sales. Backyard food production banned to protect lawn care and agricultural industries. None of these solutions failed. All worked effectively. Streetcars provided efficient transit. Hemp produced superior fiber and paper. Long-lasting bulbs save money. Repair extended product life. Municipal broadband delivered better service. Rainwater harvesting conserved water. Tiny houses provided affordable housing. Raw milk offered nutrition. Reusable containers minimized waste. Food gardens produced nutrition. They were banned because they worked too well, because they threatened industry profits, because they empowered individuals and reduced dependence on monopolies, because they solved problems cheaply when industries profited from expensive solutions. The pattern repeats. Solution works, solution threatens profits. Lobbyists intervene, laws are written, solution is banned. The intervention isn't always federal legislation. Sometimes it's state laws, local ordinances, industry cartels, or legal warfare. But the result is the same. Working solutions are eliminated to protect established interests. Progress isn't about what works. It's about what's profitable. Solutions that reduce consumption, enable independence, or threaten monopolies are killed regardless of effectiveness. The market doesn't select for best solutions. It selects for most profitable, and lobbying ensures unprofitable solutions are banned. We could have efficient public transit, hemp agriculture, durable products, repair rights, public broadband, rainwater harvesting, affordable housing, raw milk, reusable containers, and urban food production. The solutions exist and work. They're just illegal or heavily restricted because allowing them would reduce corporate profits. 10 working solutions banned after lobbyists intervened. 10 demonstrations that when solutions threaten profits, profits win. 10 proofs that the system isn't designed to solve problems. It's designed to profit from them. The solutions work. They're just not allowed to exist.